Okay. So before I get into the nitty gritty of LinkedIn and how it works and why it can be such a huge advantage and benefit to you, I want to back up and I want to talk about this idea of networking and connections and kind of try to resell you on this idea of building your professional persona, and why it's so important. So we talked about last week about how you traditionally would go get a job, and one of you mentioned in here, one of the real advantages in pursuing a job is if you what with that company, or if you know somebody, right? So if you know somebody, or even if you know somebody who knows somebody, right? That can also be advantageous. Okay. So the idea of personally connecting used to be more difficult because this existed before LinkedIn. It just existed in a different form. What did people do? And they still do it, but what did people do? To form connections. Huh?
Met people.
Met people. How?
Through people you knew.
Okay, so you met people through you knew, socially. But what other things could you do?
Job fairs.
What?
Job fairs.
Sure, you could go to job fairs. You could go to places where people are looking for jobs. But what other common things?
Group organization.
Yeah, right. Joining a group or an organization. I mean, what's the purpose of a Rotary Club? I'm kind of dating myself, but. Well, what does anybody ever heard of a Rotary Club? Yeah. Okay, so what is it? It's just where business leaders, right, or business people get together and yap and talk to each other, right? And I mean, there's a lot of. Did anybody ever hear of Toastmasters? Now I'm kind of really dating myself. That used to be like this group, a public speaking group, where you'd go and it was trying to get you over your, horrific phobia of public speaking. So they would have people, you come in and you volunteer to give a talk either on your business or organization or hobby or whatever it may be. But again, one of the main things of that club, of that group, was to meet other people. So there are still things like that exist now. So for example, there's a social media club in Milwaukee that I'm part of that meets on every Tuesday, second Tuesday of the month that I'm part of, which is a group that kind of does the same thing. In IT, what is there?
Infograd.
Okay, Infograd. So there's organizations, right? Infograd, there's ATIP, there's the VMware Users Group, right? So at MATC last year, we held the VMware Users Group. They held 4 meetings in the state of Wisconsin a year at different varying locations. So we had about 150 people at downtown MATC for the VMware Users Group. There's a Cisco Users Group in Milwaukee, right? So if you're interested in Cisco, I know that there is a WordPress group, a programming group. I know there's a ton of stuff out there that's local to Milwaukee where these groups of people meet because they have like interests. But one of the key benefits is, right, if you're a programmer, you get to meet other programmers, right, who probably are employed somewhere. I mean, that's the key, right? The key is knowing somebody. Now, in your past, or even now, if I'm talking about the typical college student graduating from college when they're 20 or 21, typically one of the biggest issues at your point in life is that you might not necessarily have this big network group of people that you can connect with. So joining these, so again, it's not. It's when people talk about college and volunteering and doing stuff outside. I mean, what do you think part of the alternate benefit of doing something like that is? It's meeting other people and getting connected with other people who are currently in careers or in fields or working in a field that maybe in the end you end up working in. And this connection, forming this connection again, is really, really important. So what LinkedIn has done is LinkedIn has made the barrier of entry into this idea of connecting with people much less. Okay? However, the value of those connections remain strong, and the real valuable connections still are typically based on your personal relationships. Okay? So the people you reach out to connect to should not be strangers. They should still be people who you know and what? Trust. Exactly. Exactly. The word comes back again to haunt us, right? This idea of establishing trust. Because the reality, again, is, you know, when you talk about formulating an employment relationship with an employer, one of the key things that can get you hired is if they come to trust you more quickly and more easily than they do somebody else. And that's why building this professional persona is so important. Because if you're blogging, you're out there on Twitter, you're active, people, they see you, you already have a voice. Once you already have a voice, the person has this already formulated this idea of trust. I think innately, inherently in us, this sounds kind of, you know, peace, love, and understanding, but I think inherently in us is the idea that we want to trust people, right? I mean, we're not looking for reasons not to trust people. We're usually looking for reasons to trust people. And that's why breaking a trust relationship can be so hurtful, can be one of the most hurtful, damaging things to any kind of relationship, right? Because that hurts, you know, when you do that. So when you think about applying for a job, again, we've talked about the resume being looked at for 10 seconds. You're gonna delve in deeper this week about the use of keywords and automatic scanning. And what you're gonna see is that much of the application of the job to a job is stacked against you. Because typically the people who are getting ahead of you are people that already know somebody, or already have a connection, or already have formulated some form of trust with that employer or person that's in charge or whomever it may be. And if you can't get to that level in some way, shape, or form for some of the jobs or jobs that you're applying for, you're always going to be battling that uphill battle. It's just, again, is it fair? No, I'm not going to argue it's fair, but it's the way things are today. And it was like that in the old days. So technology and LinkedIn and all this stuff hasn't completely distorted what normally was. I mean, you can't say that when I was in high school, the way to get a job was not by knowing somebody. Like, I didn't have to. It was probably in a way more important, because if you did, you were a shoo-in, right? Now you're just not a shoo-in, but you're above all the rest of the people that don't have that connection. I mean, when you knew somebody, I mean, it was easy. So I liked to work at Swan Pharmacy on 92nd and North Avenue for like most of high school. Well, my dad and mom had gone there, knew the pharmacist for a long time, and I mean, it's like a no-brainer then that he hires me. And the reality of the situation is that he's hiring somebody, not that he knows me, but he knows my parents well, who then kind of just automatically vouch for me, which is probably not the best thing to do. But the thing is, though, that trust relationship was there. But again, if I turned out to be a rotten employee at that place, that would be problematic because, again, for him, it would have felt like I was violating already this kind of trust relationship that he had built with my parents. So, again, this is not about, oh, well, we've just crossed this digital thing where none of that stuff is important, or, not actually meeting with people or getting to know people face to face is important. But what I'm saying is that what's become easier is when you do make those face-to-face connections. So when you go to the VMware users group, or you go to the Cisco users group, or you go to a programmers user group, and you start meeting people and talking to people, it's what LinkedIn and what these digital tools are going to allow you to do is they're going to extensively make it much easier to stay in contact and to reach out and to remember people. I mean, that's oftentimes one of the hardest parts, right? Is you're like, man, 6 months ago I went to this user group and I met this guy at Kohl's, and I took his business card, but there's no picture on here. There's nothing. I had nothing to jog my memory. I don't remember who he was. Well, if you connected with him on LinkedIn, and more likely than not, you're going to be having an easier time identifying and remembering that person that you formed that connection with. So, like I said, LinkedIn has not a tool that automatically gets you in, but what it does is it's going to dramatically increase your likelihood that you're able to get in. The other great thing about LinkedIn is that once you fill it out and you do what's necessary on it, you now have a public resume out there. You have something that's out there that people can find you at, right? So, we'll talk at the end, when we go through this, we'll talk about recruiters and all that kind of stuff, but that also makes it a more powerful tool. You have your persona in a profession, in what is considered to be a professional social network, hopefully with with other auxiliary tools that have amplified your professional persona, and you really then have this kind of complete package to display who you are, what you want to do, and who you want to be. And again, it just comes back to that, always. Okay. So if you want to log into LinkedIn, so hopefully everybody created a LinkedIn account. You want to log into LinkedIn. So, okay, just a raise of hands. How many people previous to right now had a LinkedIn account that was filled in? Okay, so 2 of you. And then how many people had a LinkedIn account but never did anything with it? Okay, 1 of you. And the rest of you are new to LinkedIn? Okay.
I filled some of it in, but not all of it.
Okay. Okay, well then I will take off or put on my start from the beginning instructor hat. So, like any other social network, LinkedIn has changed, even from last year, and it changes not frequently, but changes a fair amount on what they do by adding certain bells and whistles. And they call attention to certain things that they used to not call attention to so much, they call attention to now. Now, part of this is competing in the social media sphere of just what social media products are doing. So, for example, you've heard of Facebook saying that they want to become more professional oriented. Google would probably like to do the same thing. But again, oftentimes in this space, it's who gets there first, and then who kind of exploits it and where the most people go. So remember that the value of a social network is always going to be dictated by, is everybody else there, right? The number of people are there. I mean, Google Plus is great. I would love to be more on Google Plus with my friends and family, but not all my friends and family are on Google Plus. I mean, I prefer it to Facebook from a sharing photos and things like that interaction than I would do with Facebook. But it's hard to push everybody there unless, I make them, which is hard to do. So it's kind of the same thing with LinkedIn. LinkedIn basically carved out this professional niche. So you've often heard it called, it's the Facebook for professionals, it's the Facebook for employment, those kind of things. And to a certain extent, it is, but they've also tried to branch out into kind of the social media space in general, too. So, for example, the front page, which now looks very similar to what you would be seeing in any kind of social network, is what we typically call a news feed, right? So we have a feed of posts and the ability to comment on people's posts throughout this feed. And so again, if I wanted to update on my feed, I can go ahead and I can share a post here right from LinkedIn, either with the public, or if I choose to, I can limit it to the people who I'm connected to. I have my Twitter account connected, so I could also publish it to, I could go here and make it public on LinkedIn, but then also tweet it. Now what I do is I end up using a tool that posts to LinkedIn and Twitter, so I'm duplicating, not all the time, but I'm duplicating a lot of my content with Twitter and LinkedIn. Okay. So again, this should be very, very familiar to you. I can attach a file if I want to my post. I can go and filter through my feed. So if I wanted to just see filter my feed for my connections, so my connections show me that what people, and this is kind of, can get kind of spammy at times, but this tells me people who are connecting to new people. Okay, so a lot of these are old MATC students, and I can see that a lot of them, not a lot of them aren't posting anything, because I'm just seeing people are connecting to other people, in a sense. So I can limit it to that. I could go and I could just look for news. Okay, and this news would be based on some of the stuff that I subscribe to. I can also look at companies, and you're going to see that you're going to be able to follow companies, which makes LinkedIn also a good tool. I can subscribe to groups, and I can see those posts from different groups. Okay, so my point is that I can go ahead and I can filter this news post or this news feed any which way I want as I grow out my connections. The connections. If I just want to see my updates, I can see my updates. Okay. So fairly straightforward, right? I mean, that should not be any kind of what would be a trick to see what's going on. Okay. So this is another place now that you can come and post and interact and establish and groom your professional profile, your professional persona. So that is the feed page, okay? And again, if I want to make a comment, I can make a comment. I could share it if I want, just like on Facebook. I can post to group individuals, tweet it if I want, all the same stuff, okay? So any questions on that? All right, if you don't have anything in your feed yet, you will, hopefully by the end of tonight, after I show you where to populate some of this stuff, maybe with stuff that you might be currently interested in looking at, okay? So then the next big thing over is profile, okay? And this is the heart and meat and potatoes of your professional persona on LinkedIn. So this is your public display of your resume. And you'll see what I mean by that in a second. Now there's a couple things that are very important, and I haven't really talked about this yet in regards to like Twitter or things like that. But the stuff that I talk about right now would apply to your LinkedIn profile, your Twitter profile, your Google Plus profile on your professional handle, your if you had a Facebook page or Google Plus page or whatever it may be. So I used to use this kind of green radio. It was a green avatar of like an antenna where it's broadcasting on. I just used it for the longest time. I used an avatar. And I don't know why, it's just what I initially did, and I just did it. So actually, by doing that on LinkedIn, I was going up against their terms of services. So one day I went to apply to a group, and the guy rejected me based on the fact that I didn't have a picture. So I said, okay, I'll succumb to the man. And I put a picture up there. And now I've pretty much done so consistently through my professional persona stuff. So the first thing is you need to get a picture of yourself. Now, later on in the semester, I'll bring my wife's DSLR in, and I'll take headshots of people if you don't have a appropriate headshot. So you can come in with a tie or a jacket or whatever it may be, or business professional. Now, I again probably don't fulfill the best picture. A headshot typically, cut at the shoulders or whatever. I just think the other thing is that I want the picture to reflect who I am. I don't want it to be just this like mugshot headshot in a sense. And if you have access to a picture or you have a good camera phone, you can typically find a picture, get a picture that would be appropriate for your identity and your persona. Now, again, this was before I had the beard, but what am I going to do about that? The thing is you don't run to go and change these every time you get a haircut or something like that. But it should be a photo that represents yourself and represents yourself well. Because again, the reality of the situation is people make a judgment, right away. They just do. And so you want to look professional, or at least you want to portray yourself and present yourself the way you want to be perceived. Okay? Now, that's a big thing on Twitter. So if you still have the egg on Twitter, this week, get rid of that egg. Okay? First of all, you'll never be granted any legitimacy on Twitter having that egg. So I gave you a couple of weeks to get comfortable with Twitter. Now you got to go into the settings. If you find a good LinkedIn picture, that could also be your Twitter profile picture. Now Twitter can be a little bit more fun, maybe, in a sense, if you wanted it to be. There's nothing wrong with that because Twitter's a little bit less, I don't want to say professional, but it's less formal in a sense. But you want to get rid of that egg. Okay? The same thing is going to apply to your Google Plus profile. where your professional persona exists. And we'll talk more about later on about Google profiles. But Google profiles become incredibly important too because of their searchability and how people find you on Google. So you're going to want to find a good picture of you. And then what you'll also notice here is that you're going to be able to lock in on a URL for your account. So this would be the account that you could put in your email signature, etc., etc. And mine was Tony at MATC. So that is down here. So anytime I give this link out, that is my public profile. All right. So I went. Well, I'll go back out of editing mode. So again, here I have the explanation of who I am. Now again, if you're a student, you're a student. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast for now. I mean, you're a student in going for your degree in IT networking or IT programming or whatever it may be. Milwaukee area, higher education, tells my current workplace, previous, University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, my education, etc. And then if I click here, it has all my contact information. So it has my email, Google Talk, my phone, which is my Google Voice, address, work, Twitter account, my websites on Vimeo and things like that. So all this stuff where people could potentially, if they need me, contact me. All right, and we'll talk about Google Voice in the future for that. Okay. So then if I go through, you're going to see that I have my background. Now I do not have a summary. For most of you, you'll want to have a summary. Okay. So I have my background. I'm an instructor. Talks about projects. I'm going to speak at that conference in October, so I put in Pearson. Technical instructor consultant at Allied. Hootsuite certified. Additional organizations, right? Then I've put some projects that I completed with Larry, so the development of this class, social media projects done by the students, the development of the networking accelerated class, right? Editorial team for Social Media Club, my lab sim case study, right? And soon I'll have a Pearson VUE one, honor and awards, certifications, and then people who endorse me for differing skills that I have, my education, additional information, and then some of my connections, then the groups that I'm part of, the news that I'm following, and the companies that I'm following, okay? So, what you do is you go in and edit profile. And on the right-hand side, it will show you things that you can add. So, for example, here, I do not have a summary, and I should write a summary. And I hope maybe I will when I'm in Boston. But this would be a summary, a paragraph explaining who you are, where you're at in your life, in your situation, who you are, what you want to do, what you want to be, kind of things, right? Something that might be a portion of a part of a cover letter, something like that. But it would be a summary where if somebody was looking at your profile, they would be able to read those 3, 4, 5 sentences and get a really good idea of who you are, what you want to be, what you do, and those kind of things. Okay. And again, one of the best ways to look at and figure out what your summary should say is by looking and exploring other people's profiles, right? So you can add videos, images, and documents now. All right. And then here's positions. So here I added all my positions, right? And I can add, like, for example, when I do this presentation, I could add the documentation, or I could add the presentation information. My certifications, projects, and again, if I wanted to add a project, I would just click add, and there it would pull up with something to be able to put that project in. Same thing with experience. So I just click add, and it pops up with it. Okay. So that's like how I said, if you did a good job on your resume, a lot of this stuff can be pulled out of your resume. So same thing for projects, same thing for publications, right? Certifications, honors and awards, skills and expertise, education, all that same stuff, right, can go ahead and be added. And then if you want to, depending on where you are at, if you're in the job market or however, you can organize these sections by dragging and dropping these profile sections. Okay? So you can customize it to put on top the stuff that would be most applicable for the position that you're in and what you're trying to accomplish. Right? What you'll also notice is there's things in here that I haven't added. So for example, how many people in here are bilingual? Okay? That's an important asset to put down, right? Because there are jobs out there, there's jobs in a lot of fields that require a bilingual person. I mean, I've seen IT jobs that require bilingual speakers, okay? So if you speak languages. Now, they do have a test scores one, and if you add that, it actually is, like, you know, where it was. I'm not sure, like, I would not put your, like, AccuPlacer scores in there. How do I get rid of it? Oh, I'll just cancel it. You can also add what you'll notice, which I don't have, which will probably be very important for you, right? Would be the courses that you're taking. Right? You can also add volunteering and causes. Does anybody have any patents in here? Well, you could add patents if you had some patents. So there's other stuff that you can add on top of the stuff that's in my profile. So again, if I clicked on editing, that stuff stick. No. Oh, it did. How do you just pull this aside? It gets rid of it. I don't know. I have to figure that out. I don't know why I can't delete this. So, oh wait, I maybe know how. Okay, so any questions on filling out your profile? So this is something you want to do and start working on over the upcoming weeks. You want to start fulfilling and putting in stuff for your profile. And again, all the stuff that I talked about on a resume, cover letter, you know, as far as using good, I mean, again, do you want to use crappy grammar? Do you want to have typos? All that kind of stuff? No. Okay? So make sure that if you're putting on there, like you write a summary and you're unsure, have somebody proof it. And make sure everything is correct and spelled correctly, because this will be the initial impression for a lot of people who would be potentially employing you. Okay? Okay. So that's profile. Now, what you'll notice here is I'm at my profile strength right here. If you look at the side here, is at all-star. And that is because I have it almost completed. The only thing that I haven't done is I haven't attached a resume. You, being in the job market, would want to attach a resume, and when you go through kind of the wizard, it would ask you, to eventually do that, and that resume would probably be in a PDF format. Okay. So by the time you're done with this class, my hope is that the majority of you will be somewhere. I don't know what's under All-Star. Expert, I think, is under All-Star or something like that. Anybody give me an idea where they're at right now? Advanced. Anybody else? Anybody got noob? No, I'm just kidding. Expert.
Expert.
Okay. So, and they used to do a little differently, but the bluer this gets, the better off you're going to be in regards to filling out and improving your profile. Now, when you come back to LinkedIn, if you click on Improve Your Profile, they'll always give you stuff that can help you do this. So, for example, what degree did you earn in high school? Well, you didn't earn a degree in high school. What do you do as a speaker at Pearson North? Well, eventually, when I get the link to it, to the presentation, I'll put that in there. Do you know any other languages? No. How would you summarize yourself? Again, I don't have that in there right now. Who else worked with you on the editorial team? There's nobody that done. And then it asked me if I want to share my LinkedIn profile. Okay. So my guess is if I put a summary in too, that would probably get it up to 100%. So then the next thing is that under profile, so we've talked about the home feed, we've talked about filling out your profile. There's who's viewed your profile. And so what this shows to me is who are the last 5 people who viewed my profile. So Ike did today. Don't really know why. Matt did. Brent, Chester, Paul. And sometimes what it will say is like, somebody from Kohl's looked at your profile. It won't give me the full name. These are all, in some way, form one of my connections. And we'll talk about what this one, first, and second means. But what you can see here is, in the last 90 days, how often people viewed your profile. So I had 75 people view my profile. How many times did you appear in LinkedIn search? 198. Okay, down. Industries of your viewers, majority of them were information technology, marketing and advertising, electrical and electronic manufacturing, higher education, industrial automation. And that probably has a lot to do with some of the eclectic stuff that I post. Now we'll eventually talk about premium, but the thing is, this is what you get for free. Okay. And for most people, it's enough. Okay. Because it at least gives you an idea of who's looking and how many times your profile is being found by people who are searching on LinkedIn. Right. So that's who's viewed your profile. Okay, the next thing is your network. All right, so how many people do you know? How many? Hundreds?
Yeah.
Hundreds easily.
Okay. How many people do you know well? that you could pick up the phone and call today and just talk with? 100 still?
At least 100.
100? What else? What other kind of numbers? Anybody? You guys are too shy. I mean, how many people are in your contacts in your cell phone? A lot? How many? 40? 50? Okay. I mean, for the most part, I think a normal individual, to a certain extent, probably has, I would think, around, on average, 50 to 100 people that, unless that they're close to, that they know, that they could call, contact. Or another way to think about it is calling and asking somebody for help, right? You need to borrow 25 bucks. How many people could you call and borrow 25 bucks from, or contact and borrow 25 bucks from?
50's kind of high for that.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. So what I'm getting at is you when you start thinking about who you know, what you're going to start finding out is people on varying degrees of contact, right? And of in essence how well you know them. Everybody you know well, and you know well enough to ask for that $25, should become a first level connection on LinkedIn if they're on LinkedIn. Okay. So what you need to do is you need to initially start thinking about all the people that you know and are comfortable with asking for 25 bucks to borrow. And those are the initial people that you're going to be searching for and looking for on LinkedIn. Now, depending on your life circumstances and where you're at in life, this is all going to differ for people. So again, if I'm an 18-year-old, or let me go back to like a traditional college grad, 22 years old, right? It probably rarely happens now, but 4 years of college, they graduate with their bachelor's degree, and they're looking for a job. Who do they know, right, that would help them get a job? So it would be none of their peers, really, right? Because all the rest of their peers are also college students looking for a job. So you could maybe go then think, well, what about their high school friends? Maybe some of them, they go to college and they're in jobs now and they have a career. But would that match up with what your career goals are? So when you graduate from college and you're 22, who might be your first level connections?
Teacher.
So it might be a teacher. Although teachers are kind of inherently not bad, but unless you're going to be a teacher. We're not teaching you to be teachers, but teacher could be.
Maybe an old boss that I got lower grade.
Okay, so you probably have worked part-time jobs or even full-time jobs with other employers that maybe aren't in your field, but they know you as an employee. Those are an important subset of people, right? Because, again, even though it might not be the field you're in, they may also have professional contacts elsewhere. What else? Think even closer to you. Family, right? Family. So, and it might not be your mom and dad, but it might be your brothers and sisters. It might be your brothers and sisters' friends. It might be your aunts and uncles. It might be your cousins. It might be people who are family, right? Who you automatically have that tie with and connection with, hopefully, although not all families are the same. But that's often where you look for. Also, when you grow up, at least hopefully, you've gotten to know your parents' what? Friends, exactly. So you've probably, if male or female, maybe you babysat. Male or female, maybe you cut the lawn for other people in the neighborhood. Male or female, maybe you went and snuck in on your parents while they're playing sheep's head till late in the evening and had fun with their friends. I mean, whatever you do, you probably have established at least some relationships and some sort of connection or trust with, maybe not this first level connection yet, but with people who you trust and therefore trust you. Okay? So the one thing that you're going to have to ask yourself over the next upcoming weeks as you add connections to your LinkedIn network is you first want to identify the people that you're close to. And the people, the people you would feel comfortable with asking for $25 to loan you, right? And if they're not on LinkedIn, well, then there's nothing you can do. But if they're on LinkedIn, you need to connect with them. And I'll show you this in a second. All right. And then what you got to do is you got to start thinking a little bit outside the box. So then, if you don't have enough connections yet, then you want to start thinking, okay, who do I know from high school? Who do I know from college? Okay, that's a good question. The more, the better. However, the reality of the situation is, depending on where you are in your life, you're going to be limited. If you can get that up to 50 initially, right? If you can get it up to 50 and scour for 50 first-level connections, you'll be okay starting off. You'll be at a good starting point. If you stay under 20, LinkedIn just won't have the power. You're going to see this. I'm going to show you. You won't have the power. It won't have the efficiency and effectiveness that it would with more. Now, I'm also going to show you later tonight that you can find other people and interact with other people and hopefully form connections with other people, right? Even though maybe you don't directly have met them or something like that. Because I'm going to talk about this idea of establishing a virtual relationship, which is very applicable in this day and age. But the key is initially, you got to find people who you know and trust as your first level connections. So you got to kind of sit down at LinkedIn and you got to start typing in people's names up here. So you got to, Tom Heinen, my best friend, although he's in there, just joined LinkedIn, doesn't have any message or anything like that. He's a contact. So you just start searching for people right off the bat. Who do you know? And I've gotten, I can't think of any more people I know. So, okay, so that's one way. The other way is if you keep a contacts somewhere else in like Google or something like that, you can bring your contacts together, okay? So you can go and add contacts, and like if you had a Gmail address where you kept all your contacts or phone or whatever, you can actually pull them in from there and add them and start adding them that way. Now, I wouldn't suggest doing that initially. What I would always suggest doing initially is to I don't know why, I want to make sure. I don't know why this. But initially, what you're going to want to do is you just want to go manually sit here and start typing in people's names. Okay. Now I'm going to give me one of somebody who hasn't asked me for a friend. Who wants to give me their name that I can send a invite to become friends with them? Anybody?
You friends with me?
I don't know. Maybe from last semester.
Aaron and Evans.
I'm a second level connection with you. Okay, so I found Aaron, and now let's just say I wasn't this. If I didn't find him, I see no connection, but I'd still have this there's a button here that says connect. Okay, that's not what I wanted to do. There you go. So what I can do then is I can click connect, and after I have my profile filled out, I can choose what he is to me. Okay? So for example here, I can say he's a colleague, and I can pick where that person might have been a colleague with me. Now, colleague usually infers what? Employment, right? If I have my schools in there and he was a classmate of mine, but I never worked with him, I can classify him as a classmate. Okay?
You went to all those schools?
Yep. Actually, I went to Madison too. It's not in there. We've done business together, and again, this would infer again maybe not a colleague, but somebody like a sales relationship or a business relationship of some form. If I had that, and then I can choose friend, right? Or I can choose other. Now, what you'll notice is when I click on other, it requires an email address, so I can't spam them. It also requires an email address. Oh no, just other requires the email address. I don't know, Aaron, but again, this isn't what you want to do. So with students, I usually make them a colleague. You're not my classmates. You're a colleague. I mean, or I could choose other, but then what it's going to do is going to require a title. So for me, I just usually use instructor at Milwaukee Area Technical College as a colleague. But then by default, it gives you a little bit of a, hi, I'd like you added my professional network on LinkedIn, Tony Stanislawski. Now, is that appropriate to a lot of the people you may be sending connections to? No. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to write a little brief paragraph. Maybe if you're going to be looking at people that you've worked with previously at a company for a long time, you start finding them, but you haven't talked to them in 2 years, right? What you're going to do is write a paragraph. This is Tony Stanislawski. I'm currently pursuing my associate's degree at MATC in IT networking, and I just got turned on to. No, maybe not turned on to. I just got exposed to LinkedIn in a class that I'm taking, and I'd really love to connect with you on LinkedIn for the benefit of my future career or something like that, right? And then whatever might jog that person's memory of who you were. So just like the reference letter, sending just this, typically, especially when you're first starting off, is not appropriate. Now let's say you go to one of these VMware users groups and you sit down and you have lunch with a bunch of people and you start talking to them and get to know them, and then you say, hey, I'll hit you up on LinkedIn when I get home, right? Then can you probably do this? Yeah, right? So what you end up doing in this personal note is going to be relevant to the people that you're connecting to. Like if I get a request from somebody and I don't know them, or and they don't put anything in there, I just decline the request. And remember that initially the people that you're probably formulating connections with, especially if you're looking back to past employers or older family members or whatever, they may need a friendly jog of the memory to remember who you were, or to, oh yeah, that person. Okay? So what you'll end up doing is you'll end up going through and adding them. So then what happens is, Aaron's sitting right here in class, I'm going to send him the invitation, and he's going to be able to be added to one of my contacts. All right. So here's what's cool. So as you start building these contacts, so again, here's all these contacts, and what you'll notice, we'll come back to what these ones mean. Why does Larry not have a one on his? But you'll end up seeing all these contacts. Now I've synced it also with my Google contacts list. So there's, like if I don't see a picture, that's typically just a contact that is out of my Google list. Okay. But here's what's cool. So here's my 430 connections. I can just click here, and I can see at all the companies they work at. I can click here, and I can see their titles, what they call themselves. I can click here, and I can see where they were located. I can click here, and I can see where the source is, because I imported my Google contacts. I can see there. It also then, I haven't done this yet, I could look for potential merges. So like this would be a merge. But I haven't done that yet. But just this, right? Just this, is this of value?
Yeah.
Yes. Huge value, right? Huge value. Because now, just by looking at this, and I'll show you it's even better than this, or can be better than this. Just by looking at this, if you're applying for a job, right, and you look at your contacts and see where they're employed, and you see a job pop up, and you find out that one of your contacts is working there, what do you have now? Potentially.
Foot in the door.
Foot in the door. Connection. Exactly. It's really that simple. The idea then that you can do this is huge. So if I go back to contacts, and then I'll just go through this and then we'll take a break. If I go back through contacts, what you'll notice here is that there's this first here, right? First, and then some of them, like for example, some of them don't have any things by them because they're probably added from my Google, but eventually there should be. Maybe I can. And just see if I can find. Well, you'll see this when we come back, but there's a first level connection, and then I'll see people's names eventually that will have a 2 here, second, and then I'll have people that I see here that have a 3 behind their name. Okay? So when you start connecting with people this week and for the rest of the class, those people that you directly connect with are your first level connections, right? So these are your most important connections. These are the people that in theory, hopefully, you could call and ask them for 25 bucks, okay? And especially initially, that's the case. As your network grows, that probably becomes less, but you still might feel comfortable calling that person and saying, do you know this person who works here? Do you mind putting in a good word for me? Or can you introduce me to this person? So the second level connections that you're going to see are all the people who your first level connections are connected to, right? So what happens then as the network, if I have 400 and some first level connections, how many second level connections do I have? A lot. Right? Because these are all the people that are first level connections of my first level connections. So if I have somebody who's a first level connection and they have 500 first level connections, I now have an additional 500 second level connections. Okay? Then there's third level connections, which are the connections of those second level connections. Okay? So what ends up happening as you grow your first level connections is that your whole LinkedIn network ends up growing. Okay? So like if I go back to my profile here, I always forget where they bury this now. It used to be more. Everything's coming up with a first level connection. Where's my second? Oh, this is first level. I'm looking for a second level connection. First level connection in Amazon. When does that happen? Maybe it is only showing me my first level connections. Anyways, it's they bury it more than they used to. It'll come up when I show you looking for jobs. But it ends up being that my network with like 500 first level connections ends up being like 14 million, right, of second and third level connections. Now, the first, second, and third level connections, this is all based on that A knows B, B knows C, therefore A knows C, right?
So kind of like.
So all that transitive, is that transitive in math, I think? And that's what this whole thing is based on. So once you have a first level connection, what you're basing it on is, okay, if I know this first level connection and they know that second level connection, therefore you, if I'm looking for a job, can put me in touch with C. So I trust B, B trusts C, therefore A should trust C, or C should trust A, right? In an ideal world. But that's typically the way it works, right? I mean, if a friend comes to me and says, a close friend of mine, a first level connection comes to me and says, hey, I got this great guy that you should look at to hire. Do I look at that person to hire? Yeah, right? But remember, it's based on the strength of that first level connection. So again, if you're taking first level connections that you're in doubt with or that you don't trust, then that becomes problematic. But if you trust them, that person comes back to you and says, hey, I got this great person that could help you out. You should definitely interview him. I'm going to interview you. I'm not going to hire you. But again, this isn't about hiring. It's about interviewing. It's about getting your foot in the door. It's about getting past the scanner on resumes. It's about getting past, being looked at your resume for 10 seconds. It's being put on the front of the pile so that at least you get your foot in the door and you're able to talk to somebody. Okay? All right, any questions then? Because when we get back, what I'll show you is jobs, groups, and then interests and things like that. But the big thing is how to look for a job and then use LinkedIn to hopefully help you to get to know somebody who knows somebody if they already a first level connection there to introduce you and get you an interview. All right. Okay, let's take a break until about 25-2 or so.
Can I get a signature? Oh. In that 1 week we don't have class, I might need to get a note from you saying we're working outside of class that week or something.
Okay.
Thanks.
What? No, not yet.
Should be there.
Okay. So you've gone in, hopefully, and you have a completed profile. You started adding first level contacts of people you know, trust. All right. You continue through school, keep updating your profile with the new skills that you're acquiring, the new classes, new experience, internships, things you produce, all that kind of stuff. You get to near the end of graduation and you decide, I'm going to start looking for jobs. Or more importantly, maybe jobs will find me. So if I go to this jobs tab, again, this is another place I can go to and search for jobs. Now, your page probably doesn't look like mine because I've added a whole bunch of stuff. But let's just go and look for a job, say, in network admin. So, oh, freighter. That might be a place I want to work. So I click on it. Gives me a description. Gives me the website where to apply to, all that kind of stuff. Okay, super. But here's where the power of LinkedIn comes in. Okay? So I'm linked to Freighter Health, but what you'll notice here is I do not have any first level connections that work at Freighter or at Freighter currently. But I have 3 second level connections. All right? So now remember, what is a second level connection? Yeah, friend of a friend. Good way to put it. So what I can do is, okay, Tom, I don't know who Tom is, but Tom knows one of my connections. So I look, and I scroll down. It says I could follow Freighter Health if I wanted to. Might be a wise choice if I'm in the job market. And then what I look is, it shows me, Jill, who's on our advisory committee, Brian, who's an instructor here at MATC, right? And then Tom. And what you'll notice then is there actually is a little button here, or a little link here, that says Get Introduced. So what I can do then, I could choose who I wanted to share the introduction with at that point in time, and I could go through it and get a virtual introduction to Tom through either Jill or Brian. It's one way of doing it. The other way would be calling Brian and Jill, right? Or contacting Brian and Jill and say, hey, I'm applying to that job I saw a job at Freighter Health. I want to apply for it. I noticed that you're friends with Tom Sepik, right? Is it possible for you to contact him and put in a good word for me so that I might be able to get an interview for that position? Then if I scroll down here, it tells me what I have in common with Tom, in this case, is just the greater Milwaukee area. So, if he were a graduate of Marquette High School, graduate of Cardinal Stritch, worked at Milwaukee Area Technical College for a time, I would see something more, there would be more things that I would have in common. They're just having me, what's in common is our locality. If I go to Ellen is Tom O'Brien. So now I have my third person that has a contact to Ellen, who is human resources at Freighter Health. Think I might want to get my name in front of her? Through Tom? You betcha. And Tom I went to high school with and remain in contact with. So then I go to Carl. He's the director of operations at St. Joseph's. And if I look at who's in contact with him, there I have Timothy Waldick. Again, just saw him at my reunion. I went to school with him, high school with him. So I basically have 4 people that can help me get in touch with, or at least get my name in front of, the network lead team at Freighter Health, the human resources at Freighter Health, and the director of operations at Freighter Health. So I have 4 first-level connections that I know personally that I could call and potentially ask for $25, right? Who I potentially could call and ask, hey, can you put in a good word for me, or can you get me introduced on LinkedIn? And what now has happened to the likelihood that my resume gets looked at?
Goes way up.
Way up. Way up. Way up. Or what's the likelihood that somebody goes to my LinkedIn profile or somebody Googles me and looks for my professional persona? All that stuff, the chances or the likelihood that would go up has gone up dramatically. And that's huge. So this is the same thing that we did back in the old days. It's just that now we have computers that are capable of keeping track of all these connections and then even kind of flesh out the tree further along than it's just like, oh, I know you. Do you know who works here? Because people are voluntarily putting their work, their information out there to be keep track of in LinkedIn's database, which means formulating these connections are simple. I mean, it's simple for LinkedIn, simple for a database to do this, right? Because all these are just columns in your database, where you worked, where you went to school, what you're doing, all that kind of stuff. That's just, so they're just basically, and then when you form that connection, they're just looking at boom, 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 who your friends are connected to, etc. But all of a sudden, at the very least, you have some information that you did not have previously. Say you get called for the interview. Say out of the blue, you're looking at this and you get a call for the interview. Does this information help you? Sure it does. I went to school with Tom O'Brien, and I would probably still contact him and tell him I'm applying. Oh yeah, I'm good friends. I went to school with him. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, you all of a sudden have this ability, again, to turn on very quickly this formulation of a trust relationship that exists. So again, this illustrates, though, the importance of those first-level connections. Because again, if they're just yahoos that you know, or people you don't trust, or people who you know are crappy employees, or people you know who have a bad history of some sort or the other, those are your people you want to be your first connections, right? Because then if your first connections break down, this whole thing breaks down, right? Meaning that if you have really weak first connections, the whole system of this going to your second and third connections breaks down. But when I kind of played with this, like an interesting story that again, as you start thinking about your connections and who you become connected to, and again, for a lot of you, this is a month-by-month process for you. I mean, especially as you're younger and you have less first-level connections. But anybody you meet or you get to know, you should always be looking up on LinkedIn and trying to add them if you formulate any kind of trust relationship with them. So here's a story. So I worked on. I was a big Howard Dean fan when he ran for president. I was real involved in the campaign here, and I went to the convention, and I met this guy who was a Kerry fan. Well, Kerry eventually got nominated, but we met we were at the convention for about 2 days, and I met him there. And we lived up in Oshkosh, and nice guy, but we were always razzing each other, and then we'd see each other, over the course of the election and things like that. Not somebody that I know him, and I knew him, and we knew each other, and we joked around and all this kind of stuff. But I didn't go to school with him. I wasn't a work colleague with him. I wasn't somebody who hung out with him on a personal basis. But we had stuff in common, and we got to know each other through that. So he lived up in Oshkosh, and I never really knew what he did. I mean, I never got to know him in that regard. I just knew him as Jeff and the Care guy, and and this, that, and the other thing. And he ran for like an alderman up there and stuff. And I kept track of him, and we kind of kept we'd see each other once in a while here and there. And so all of a sudden one day I'm sitting at my computer. This was less than a year ago, probably 6 months ago. I'm sitting at my computer. We had in the interim we had been friends on Facebook, right? And so all of a sudden I see him posting something, and he's like he was like born and bred Wisconsinite, basically. I always thought of him that way. And all of a sudden I see that he's moving to San Francisco. I'm like, what? And all of a sudden I see his job title on Google change. Now I hadn't been friends with him on LinkedIn at that point because we were more personal friends. And I saw that his employment changed, that he was going to work for Google. I was like, holy crap. I mean, I just didn't, not that he couldn't do it, but I didn't have this in my mind's eye that he was going to work. So then, like, very next thing, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm like looking up Jeff Hall and friending him on LinkedIn because now I'd have a first level connection to Google, and that would be awesome. So part of that game. But he went and he actually was doing a lot of the stuff that I've become interested in with, SEO and basically he's doing analytics for Google for SEO stuff. And I didn't know that was his career because that's not how I knew him. But it shocked me that he eventually was this. Now he lives in San Francisco and works for Google. So my point is that as you move forward, you're gonna now. Would I feel comfortable borrowing $25 from Jeff? Probably, I would. But the other thing though is, I mean, what I'm getting at is eventually you get to the point where these people don't necessarily. You learn to trust them in other ways, or you learn to know them in other ways. So not that like I was ever best friends with him, or I was very, other than where I'd see him at other events, but we ever did stuff together or things like that. That wasn't the case. And maybe part as you grow older, as you become developing more of a professional persona out there in regards to your activity, you start getting to know people like this who you do end up considering to be a first level connection. So when you look at my connections, I have 400 and 500 some first level connections. I would say that about 200 of those are people who I know personally in some way, shape, or form. The other ones are probably probably more than that, because students, other people who have contacted me, because eventually what I end up doing is if somebody sends me a LinkedIn invitation, I look at who they know. So if they know a lot of my first level people, then and they work in the field or they're doing something, I typically will accept their requests. So in essence, when you end up starting becoming active on LinkedIn, people will start sending you first level requests, and then it'll be up to you to gauge whether or not they should be accepted as first level connections. But again, I wouldn't suggest just adding those people willy-nilly, because you want to at least, again, like for me, they have to know a good solid part of my first level connections. So what I think of is, well, I've just never met them. They've heard about me probably, or I've been talked about or something, and they're adding me in regards to that connection. But you end up, that kind of leads into the second part, where as you start becoming more active and developing your professional persona, people will know you. So for example, I'm doing that conference in a couple of weeks. Well, Larry and I found out there was a woman from UWM giving the keynote at the conference. So there's actually going to be like 3 people from Milwaukee and Boston. And so I befriended Larry, and I sent her an invitation on LinkedIn, said, hey, we're going to meet you at the conference. We're going to, I'm sure I'll get to know her at the conference. And then we also have in common that she's living here in Milwaukee. So, we followed each other on Twitter, and I sent her an invitation on LinkedIn. But there will probably be a lot of people I meet in Boston that I won't become great friends with, but we'll have enough in common that will become first-level connections with on LinkedIn. Okay. So again, when I look at these jobs, so again, here's help desk representative at Quad Graphics. So again, I have a bunch of second-level connections here. Look at some of these, see if I have any first level. Here's a group, and a group is the owner, and I'll talk about groups in a bit. Here again, I have nobody for that job connection. So if I put in something else like programmer, Again, a third level connection. Here I got a first level connection, right? He's actually new part-time position. One of our former students there. So as I go through and look at this, I can see more and more regarding, again, these are all second level connections. But second level connections in a way are just as good as first level connections if your first level connections are solid. Okay. So you can also get email alerts on jobs they're posting. It'll also come up eventually as you join groups and they find out who you are and what kind of field you're in. It'll start populating with places to discover new jobs. You know, it's like, you know, here's CompuCon, and then they have a place here where you could follow them. They talk, they give you information. Here's CompuCon Java programming careers. So oftentimes employers will use this as just the same way as you're looking as a way to find people. They'll be using it the same way. Okay. And then lastly, there's interests. So again, this kind of segues back into this idea that if you're going to start expanding the connections of the people who you're talking to, so again, like I told you, that one of the important aspects is getting involved in professional groups. Well, what you can do here is you can follow companies. So if you're in the job market, you could go and you could look for companies that you potentially want to work for, right? And you can actually sort and look, right, based on certain things. So if I want to look at companies where my first level connections are, right, I could go ahead and look here, and I could end up just saying, okay, I'm going to follow all these companies because somebody in my first level group is working there. And if a job opportunity comes up and it's posted, I'll know I have a first level connection there, right? So you could do something like that. You could go for location, right? Just look for Milwaukee. You could sort by industry, right? Company size, number of followers, whether they're part of the Fortune 500, whatever it may be. So you can get fairly granular. But what is the advantage then of following companies?
You see when postings are.
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at, for example, here's Harley Davidson. We know that's here. Here they're listing all the jobs that are Harley Davidson. Now again, you don't know if if one of what you are capable of doing is interested. But when I look at the company, it gives me again a lot of good information. It says that I have 169 second degree connections. Okay, there's 4,600 employees on LinkedIn. There's 5 jobs posted. Tells you what other companies are follows. It also is a quick and easy way to get an idea about what the company's about. Now, Harley doesn't fill in that much. Some companies do more than others. But it gives you an idea of that. So what you can do initially is you can start following companies that you potentially may find employment in. And this can also, like I said, be based on your followings, your connections, etc. So another good way to get involved, like here, Johnson Controls does a little bit more, it looks like. So they have a home, they have updates, so you can learn about the company. Here they have the careers, they have a nice video, right? Products and services. You can actually find out a lot about the company. Insights, that one. So that's one way of starting to get involved and following companies. The next way is groups. So you can go ahead. So I'm part of Milwaukee. There's a group out there called Milwaukee Area Technical College IT Programs, Milwaukee IT Leadership, There's a Green Bay Packer fans group, job openings, network after work, social media, right? So what you can do is you can go and look for groups that you might be interested in participating in, right? And then you can take an active discussion or forum within those groups. So again, this is another way of establishing your professional persona. So if you come and you start participating and adding to a group in something that you're interested in, again, this is another way to break down that trust barrier. Although you're doing it virtually, if you remain consistent and you have something to add, you might get noticed. It's just another way of going about interacting with people like you normally would in a users group, but in a virtual group around a community that you find of interest. So for example, I'm here in the Green Bay Packers group. Nothing to do with IT networking, social media, or anything like that. But what would be the advantage of maybe getting active in, now being a fan is sometimes difficult to remain rational in, but if you remain rational, what's the problem? What's the good thing about maybe getting involved in a group like this?
You might hear about a job.
Might hear about a job. You might become familiar to somebody who's looking for somebody for a job. I mean, again, it goes back to why I'm telling you to establish a Twitter persona, a blog persona. Interacting in this fashion is a way to get to know people based on common interests, right? Again, I mean, it's these little kind of things that go a long way. And if you don't, how many people in here have formed a relationship online, and I'm not talking about marital or anything like that, but how many people have formed with a group of friends or something where you haven't met them, but you initially met them online? Just 1, 2, 3. That's it? 4? Not raising it. So how did it happen? Give me an example.
Facebook.
Okay, so Facebook is one.
Through the Renaissance Fair, I met people, and then
Okay, so you met them around a common interest, right?
right.
Yes, right. You never met them in person until maybe later
I
on.
maybe seen them, but I didn't know them.
You didn't
and
know
all
them?
of a sudden, it's like go up and talk to each other,
Right.
and you're friends.
Right,
I made
exactly.
a lot of contacts that way.
Yes, yes. What else?
Gaming.
Gaming. Gaming's a big one. I use this example, but like when I played Vanilla WoW, I got into a guild, and it was a guy that run by 2 guys in Texas, and we had a ball for like 6 months. And my wife would walk past me in the room and she thought I was crazy, because I'd have this headset, and I'd be yapping and talking and laughing and all this kind of stuff, and she's like, "What? Who are you talking?" I'm like, "Well, these guys in the guild." Who? Well, guys, I met them through the guild. I don't know. One's a warlock. One's a rogue. One's this. I don't know. But you didn't get to know their real names right away, but you recall them by their tune's name. But you started to get to know these people, and eventually, what you end up having is normal. I mean, the conversations didn't always revolve around going out and conquering a dungeon or something like that. You started having conversations of what do you do? What do you do for fun besides WoW? Blah blah blah. And you started getting to know the people. And there's nothing in my head that would have stopped me. Like if one of those guys would have called me and said, "Hey, I'm coming up to Milwaukee. I need a place to stay." My wife probably would have thought I was crazy. But there's nothing in my head that would have said, "Yeah, you can stay with me." And I would never have met those people initially. And I've gotten to know people since then through other means, Facebook, especially teaching online students, especially with my cohort group where I have the same set of online students throughout the whole program. I feel like I get to know some of those guys better than I get to know ever my in-person students, unless those in-person students come back and stay in contact with me. Because, I'll see them on Google Hangout, they'll be sending me a link in chat, and they develop this persona that I know. I talk to them, I email them, I chat with them, hang out with them, I see them, through Hangout, and all of a sudden, you feel like you know these people fairly well. And until you have that, everybody should push to have that experience and kind of open themselves up to it, because I think you're amazed at what can transpire with that. And so being active in these groups and promoting yourself through adding to a discussion or adding information to a topic that you have some either expertise on or opinion of is a good way of exposing yourself to it. And it happens all the time. And it's happening more and more. I mean, again, like just through some of the people that I've, gotten to know through Twitter and stuff. I mean, it's just you find things in common, and all of a sudden you're talking, or you're DMing, or you're chatting, or you're messaging in Facebook to somebody who I've never really met in person, but you have stuff in common and you feel like you've gotten to know them. And that's a really good way of expanding your network, especially after you have your initial connections. And it's something like, so being active in a group or finding something that you're involved in, or even if it's something that you're involved in, if you go to the VMware users group, that meets 4 times a year. To remain active and to remain in contact with these people, they're typically going to rely on some form of social media to provide that interaction. And that's where you can really kind of develop and flesh out the relationships. Now, from what I've heard, dating online is the same way right now. I mean, it's the primary way in which people meet each other. Because if you meet online, they're doing the same thing as LinkedIn is, right? You're putting down all your interests, what you're interested in, what you like to do, what activities you like to do, and then they're hopefully matching people based up on those interests and activities. And it's probably a better crapshoot than walking into a bar and just saying, "Hi, how are you?" From either direction, and trying to get to know the person that way. So, it happens, and you can establish yourself, especially within groups where you may have an already outside connection to. Then they added some new stuff to LinkedIn. This is new since last year. They have a page for influencers, which again is a good way to go and look for stuff that you might be interested in sharing and tweeting and engaging with on LinkedIn. So you can look at, here are the channels. They have different channels that you can choose to subscribe to. And really, it's kind of like a news feed for it. And then once you've done that, you can come there and you can go look on there, and you can see the influencers post. But then you can also look at the stuff that you're subscribing to, and you can see and read, and then easily share or like. So if you want to share it on LinkedIn, hit that share button. And I don't know what happened there. And I can go ahead and share that update. I don't want to. So it's basically LinkedIn's, we'll talk about, in the future, we'll talk about Feedly, and we'll talk about ways of going through large amounts of information. But again, if LinkedIn was your place, your portal, where you were doing a lot of this stuff, this might be a good place to start for tweeting and for sharing on LinkedIn. Okay. And then they have education, where here they're trying to get into the student experience. And to be honest with you, I have not played with this yet because it's so new. It's probably within the last month. So that's university. So I go to, see, it's really for graduates. So like, if you graduate from MATC, there should be an MATC, but these are all the places that I went to school. So you'd be able to find alum from MATC. Questions? Has anybody had any experiences with LinkedIn they want to share, or anything the value of it or the non-value of it, or you don't believe me, you do believe me?
Something else, I just got about 3 connections off of Facebook.
What'd you say?
I was gonna say it's helped me reference clients before I actually met them in person.
Mm-hmm. You were saying something last week. What?
Yeah, LinkedIn is actually the way that employers are finding people. That's how I found candidates. And you get a good sense of if you're looking for a particular person, you just punch it in there, do a search without paying for it.
So you went and recruited that person? You didn't even put in a job?
There was a job ad on jobs,
Okay.
but to find.
After they applied?
And, you go second and third in.
Right. Right.
Actually, that link right there is actually.
Is what?
LinkedIn today,
Oh, yeah?
the 5 people you should never hire. And it actually talks about Twitter, LinkedIn. But it's pretty interesting how this is it's getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if I tweeted this one. Maybe I did. One typo. Yeah.
It's like good questions, because those are really pretty standard interview questions.
Right. Yeah, I mean, again, one of the reasons we thought it was really important to have this class was just to get you guys on LinkedIn. I mean, that's one of the realities is just to get you on LinkedIn and thinking about LinkedIn and go, because you would be at such a disadvantage come graduation. And see, what's unique about, again, the way we envision the class is if you're a first or second semester student, you're going to have a year to really amp up this LinkedIn profile and really add stuff to it as you go along through your career at MATC. And again, I can only lead you the horse to water and tell you that this is the way people are finding employees. This is what will put you over the top. This is what will. I mean, again, personally, if I was going to hire somebody, now I'm not in a position. I know people have attested to this, and I looked for them on LinkedIn. They weren't on LinkedIn. I would dismiss them. I would not. Especially in the IT or technology field, I just would dismiss them. And it's funny because what I'm seeing partially too is the resistant old timers in IT. So the resistant old timers in IT got a rude awakening when like COBOL when client server came in and mainframes kind of died. And there was a whole subset of people who just could not accept that and never updated their skills. And what I see happening now is the same thing. Is there's a subset of people out there in IT who are resistant to, I don't need to do this, I don't need to do that. But the problem is that even with a good resume, I mean, the funny thing is the better your resume is, or the better, more experience and all that kind of stuff you have to showcase, and the more stuff you've done and persona-wise and all that, the better your LinkedIn profile will look, right? I mean, it'll look better as you add more stuff or you accomplish more stuff. So it's not going away. I actually advocate. I mean, I don't have any kids, but I'm going to advocate my niece and nephew to start doing all the stuff that I'm telling them to do, probably by senior year in high school. Meaning, get a LinkedIn profile, start building your professional persona through college. You can still have fun, but you need to really take control of all that. And I don't know if some people just, I don't know if anybody saw what I tweeted. Did you see what California passed? Did you see that? Yeah, they basically passed a law that you're able to scrub your internet history. I'm not sure how it will be accomplished, but you're able to scrub your internet history as a minor. So that wouldn't cover college, but it would cover any high school indiscretions. So basically, if you got a picture of you posted or something like that, once you turned 18, you'd be able to go and they were very unclear on how they were going to do this, but you would basically be able to go scrub your profile or your internet footprint and then be able to kind of start over again.
That's like possible.
Well, I don't know. Again, California, I don't know. Again, they weren't very clear on how they could do it. But remember, it's only under 18. It's not.
Right, so if you post a picture and somebody takes a screenshot of that, what are they going to do? How are they going to know that you took a screenshot?
What about Wayback Machine?
Yeah, again, I'm not sure. Again, they were really unclear. I didn't read. The law had some, like, again, you can always create laws, but if they're unenforceable and they don't work, it's not an issue. But, I mean, you're starting to hear some of that stuff now. But again, like, I advocate, you can still have fun, you just got to take control over this. And the reality of the situation is by the time my niece and nephew are in college, which my nephew would be in like 5 years, you should be under the, anytime you're out in public, I would argue it now, you should feel the same way. You should be thinking that you're going to be photographed. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast now. As Google Glass comes out and all that kind of stuff, that stuff is just going to become more and more prevalent. Which again, like I said, on the flip side of the coin, might lessen the impact of bad things too, because if everybody's got something inappropriate or bad out there, or not bad, but inappropriate out there, then that kind of lessens the impact of it. So I don't know. It's going to be a crazy frontier that we're going to be crossing into. But for now, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, I just don't think you're a contender, especially in the IT field, of getting a job in this day and age. Questions? Okay, so I'll give you, you can meet with your groups or partners. This week you're doing the discussion topic, and you should be, even though it's not assigned you, but it'll be part of your first update, and I'll be giving you feedback on your resumes. You should start filling out your LinkedIn profile and start looking and getting connections. Also, if you're still not following at least 50 people on Twitter, you should start looking at that as a goal too, to at least get up to following 50 people on Twitter. There's a lot of interesting stuff I posted on Twitter this week. A lot of interesting stuff going on. I mean, for what Twitter's doing, for how now today they announced they're going to be allowing emergency broadcasts from police and fire and all this kind of stuff. It's they went to that recommendation engine where you can get recommendations through DM or through the mobile app that'll come to you. The more and more I see them and what they're going to probably be capable of doing. I mean, I think I posted one article where it basically reiterated a lot of stuff I said, that if you're not on Twitter now, you'll be on Twitter 3 years from now. Because just like it was with my mom and dad, they weren't on Facebook, but then 3-4 years later they were. The same thing's going to happen to Twitter. People are just going to be. You're going to be using it's going to be your main news source. It's going to be your way to disseminate information. It's the way you're going to be able to get alerts. It's the way you're going to be able to interact and improve the quality of entertainment that gets served to you. There's just going to be tons of ways that I think it's going to end up being utilized. So, any questions? I don't know, either got to get the heat turned off in here. I don't know why people are so not talking to me. Okay, so meet with your partners. Get going on LinkedIn. Remember the discussion board, and I will see you next week.